Have you heard of the Christian Scientists, the ones that don't believe in doctors and don't take medicine? If you've ever heard that, or you know of them, or you are one who believes that, it's a common misconception that is really rooted in some truth that got distorted over the last 100 years. The woman who discovered the truth that we're spiritual beings and that we've kind of fallen into a mesmeric state of two-ness, where we think we're the material forms out there. Those material forms are just a hologram of our thoughts as a spiritual being, and both individually and collectively a hologram. Well, in 1866, she discovered this truth. And one of the things that she wrote in one of her books was in Rudimental Design Science, is one of her books. She was asked, is healing the sick the whole of science, the whole of Christian Science? She said, healing physical sickness is the smallest part of Christian Science. It is only the bugle call to thought and action in the higher range of infinite goodness. The emphatic purpose of Christian Science is the healing of sin. And the healing of sin is the healing of our belief in two-ness. Instead of us being one individual being, one with God, one as a whole, we are in a current state where we believe we're two. We're the body out there that we see, this one you're seeing in the video, and that we're the soul beyond form, the invisible self, the higher self, the immortal being, that's spiritual, never in matter. When Mary Baker Eddy discovered this, she was healed of an accident that she had had, where she had been pronounced incurable by the doctor at that time, and he just assumed, everyone assumed she would pass away right away. And she discovered that it had been something she'd been looking for unknowingly. She didn't know what she was looking for exactly, but when that hit, she knew that was exactly what she had been looking for, and so she was healed. And then so she was able to heal others because she understood, all of a sudden she understood we are spiritual beings, not the material forms out there. And the two-ness isn't out of alignment with what is, or what is true about us. And so when she came back into her oneness, understanding really what's going on, she was able to, people were able to see healing around her all the time, because the belief in two isn't out of alignment with truth, which in that out of alignment, things are out of line. We're sick. We have financial issues. We have depression. We have bigotry and hate and fear and anxiety and doubts and worries and wars and evil of all kinds. But as we come back into alignment with this simple truth of who we are, we start to see healing around us everywhere, because our thinking is back in alignment with truth, or coming back into alignment with truth. And it helps others, because it kind of breaks the chains of their mesmeric thought that they're two beings instead of one immortal, eternal being. You can call it the soul, not the soul in body, but the soul that is the cause of it all, the soul, the real being, our source, our true self, our higher self. So when her students started seeing that she could heal, they wanted to learn how to heal. And she knew that the healing came through her understanding of the truth, through many years of studying the Bible and looking for something, and studying different methods. There was all kinds of different methods back then, homeopathy and all kinds of different things that she studied, thinking, oh, maybe this is what I'm looking for. And so when she came into this truth and was able to heal, everyone's like, well, let's just teach us to heal then. Without understanding that it came with a growing understanding of who you really are. And so she kind of taught them ways to get their thought headed in the right direction of their oneness. And she had to start out very slowly, teaching. This was in the 1800s. 1866 is when she discovered it, and then later on in that she started teaching others. And she taught them, like, illness isn't real. It's a creation of this belief in two-ness. It's maybe an effect of this belief in two-ness. But since you aren't that mortal, the one in the video, you aren't that being, that personality. You're the soul beyond it, the soul creating the image like a holograph. She couldn't get them to understand that so clearly, so she would teach them simple things like, you are perfect, like as a perfect reflection of God. She had 7 synonyms that defined God: principle, mind, soul, spirit, life, truth, and love. And she said that's what God is, and so you are the reflection of God. They weren't ready yet to understand really the oneness. So she had to start teaching them, well, when you see illness, realize that's not something out there in and of itself. It's not real. Physical illness isn't real. No illnesses are real. And just start there. And she had, just teaching people like little baby steps, kindergarten plus, like multiplication and addition. You're perfect because God's perfect. Because God is life, or because life is a fact of being, you live. And you are an eternal being because God is, because life is a truth of being. And since life is a truth, you can never die. You're never born into matter, and you never die out of matter. She wrote a book, Science and Health with Key to the Scripture, and she wrote others books, and she saw that Jesus was teaching the same things, and he was doing the same thing. He was teaching them the baby steps, like the Sermon on the Mount and love your neighbor as yourself. All of that are the baby steps to start to come into this oneness. Because not only are we just one, we're not the mortal self. I mean, we're not the image. The image is a reflection of us, but we are the soul. Not only are we a soul, one soul individually, but collectively we are all one soul together. But we have different perspectives within that soul and different identities within that soul, not in matter, but in spirit. We have with different identities. And so in her books, she's talking over and over again about these truths, and she says them in different ways all throughout her writings. But what happened is that when she passed away in 1910, she had taught her closest students the highest truths, the ones that were ready for it. Just like Jesus did. He taught his 12 disciples the highest truths. But to the multitude and to everyone else, he taught them, love your neighbor as yourself. And because we are all one, really. And so if you hurt your neighbor, you're hurting yourself. They couldn't understand it at that level. So he was just love your neighbor as yourself, the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes. Everything that he taught was this kindergarten level to get them starting to think differently about reality. And Mrs. Eddy had to do the same thing to start getting people to think different about reality. These were all Christians that she was teaching, because at that time, everyone was Christian. Pretty much everyone in the United States where she was teaching, in back east in Boston, in Massachusetts. And so she was using the Bible and explaining its spiritual meaning and what Jesus was really trying to teach his students and others. And she was trying to do the same herself. But both her and Jesus did teach their students the higher truths of who they really were. But in 1910, when she passed, there was no one to kind of keep that truth going, because even her closest students had not elevated, they had not come far enough to take the teachings on their own in that sense. And so they continued to teach at a kindergarten level to their students, and then their students learned the kindergarten level, and then their students learned the kindergarten level. And today in the movement, everyone you see going to a church, everyone who still believes they're in a religion and a church, rather than they've just been given this great truth about who they really are, they're all still in that so that kindergarten level. And they're walking around, when I was sick, my dad would sit me down and tell me how it wasn't real and I was God's perfect child, and because God's not sick, I can't be sick because I'm his reflection. And there were so many. This is what we grew up on. Anyone who grew up in the church and the religion grew up on, what you would call the milk of the word, or the kindergarten teachings. Only those that are ready and are, kind of start to get disillusioned. A lot of people have gotten disillusioned by Christian Science because there is so much focus on healing. They liked what Mrs. Eddy had to say, but they really wanted the healings, They wanted to not. They wanted a way to be well, which how can you blame them? Mrs. Eddy was healing everyone of every disease, and her students were doing the same, and they were able to teach their students to do the same. And yet, most of that healing is what we call mental healing through mortal mind. It is little gyrations of that the mortal mind, the one out here, the one that you see in the video, the lower self or the small self or the small I, mortal mind, the ego, human ego, is like mental gyrations that one is doing to try and remind themselves or prove to themselves or prove to someone else. See, you're not immortal. You're not ill. See. And it only works because the power of the mind is the power of mortal mind is very strong in terms of creating good or evil. But it was never the healing that Mrs. Eddy was able to do. Very few, in fact, know how to do that healing. And that's because they focus on healing. They think, well, let's figure out why we're not healing here and why we're not healing there, and what do we have to do to heal, and how do we have to heal. And everyone in the church is running around trying to figure out, well, when you had this, what did you know? Or when you had that, what did you know? I read this article in the Sentinel, and she had the same disease I have, and this is what the article said that she thought. So it's all based on thinking that the disease is in our mind, and we have to get rid of it from our mind. It's instead, what we're really doing is ascending. We're ascending the mortal sense of ourself. We're ascending our two-ness into oneness. we're surrendering the false self, the smaller I, the mortal mind, in favor of our true self as soul, as spirit. And the way she taught to do that and taught her students to do that, and all of her students learned anyone who took class from her learned this. They learned to do self-examination. They learned to ask the soul of them, the higher self, to show them where they were caught up in the belief of being the mortal self, the small self. And it can be anything from, resenting your neighbor for having a tree that their fruit is falling on your land and it's ruining your land. The resentment is an issue because it is a punctuation of two-ness, both two different individuals, and within yourself, you're thinking there's something out there that's causing me problems, that my neighbor is causing those problems. And so it's accentuating that this holographic image that is just an image of our thoughts as a spiritual being, that the holographic image is real and it's substantial and that it's problematic to me. So if soul was to reveal to me that was something that was hooking me into the belief that I was mortal, then it would be something that I could let go of and say, it's just it's a way I'm kind of tricking myself into thinking I'm mortal, or it's a way I've been tricked into thinking I'm mortal. And that trick is really sin, is the Mrs. Eddy's definition of sin, and I would say Jesus's definition of sin. It is the two-ness. It's tricking me into two-ness, and there's only one. I mean, that's a really simple example, but when you start doing the self-examination and you're humble and willing to listen and hear what it is, it could be anything that has grounded you into the mortal picture, things just start to come up that you would not, it's so surprising and it's so freeing. When it comes up from soul and soul reveals it to you, your soul, your being, your real self, your true self, it is really freeing. It is like this huge, massive weight has been released, or these huge chains have been taken off of you. And it's such a release, and it's the last thing you have to do is just let it go for good. And every time it seems to come back into your thought, you let it go and let it go and let it go. And that was the process that she taught that brought ultimate healing. It was the healing of sin. But sin meaning two-ness, thinking that we're two, an immortal being and a material being, or my neighbor and me, two, any type of two, but we're only the one together, the one immortal soul. In Miscellaneous writing, she also, she said the only difference between the healing of sin and the healing of sickness is that sin must be uncovered before it can be destroyed, and the moral sense be aroused to reject the sense of error. These are all errors in our thinking. While sickness must be covered over with the veil of harmony, and the consciousness be allowed to rejoice in the sense that it has nothing to mourn over but something to forget. So it's a beautiful teaching about how to ascend out of the error of an existence separate from God, or separate from the whole, or separate from ourselves. And in that comes healing. But the Christian Science, religion, and church of today has focused completely on healing, on the effect, and they're trying to get there by bypassing the healing of sin. And that's because they've stayed in the kindergarten stages of Christian Science, and they have not the teachers in the church today, the practitioners, the healers, the people who are the board of directors of the first church, and the family members and everyone at church, they're all, it's like self-contained atmosphere where they're all like reverberating the same things back to each other. It's just like they're just saying the same things, hearing the same things, and nothing's changing. It's just this echo chamber of thinking. And they are not currently able to come out of that echo chamber and think differently about it, and to go back to Mary Baker Eddy's writings and to things that the church is hidden. They hide a lot of things from the members because they think the members aren't ready for them. And a lot of these things are in the hidden material that they truly, honestly believe we're not ready for. And so anyone today who starts to realize there's something more, and it's not all about this physical healing, and we just don't go around telling everyone, you're not ill, you're not sick. And there's such a fear of doctors, and there's such a fear of the medical field. But they're provided to us as temporary means. I mean, the whole purpose is to heal ourselves of two-ness, to find out why we're stuck in two-ness, and to get over it and get to be done with it. And that can take lifetimes. And so that's the important part. If we're going to go to a doctor or anything like that because we need help, it should be a non-issue. And in fact, Mary Baker Eddy said it should be a non-issue. But so that's hopefully gives you some background on why the movement thinks that they're about not going to doctors and not taking medicine and healing physical illness, and that's probably the only thing you've heard about it, because they're just stuck in an echo chamber that really started in 1910 when Mary Baker Eddy passed away.